Joining me in this episode is futurist Josh Drean. Josh is a renowned expert in talent management, people analytics, and workforce experience with a keen focus on integrating these areas with emerging technologies through his company that he founded, Work3 Institute. Enjoy the conversation. You're listening to Working Forward, a future of work focused podcast from People Forward Network. These episodes pave the road ahead, helping us confidently step into the future as a leader who moves people forward. After all, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Let's go. Josh Drean. It's been too long, brother. How you doing, man?
It has been. It's only been weeks, but that also feels way too long. Jason, it's good to see you.
It does. And I don't know about you, man, but doesn't it feel like with just how much things are changing, like each week and each month, it feels like around the world, it just feels like a complete whirlwind all the time. Do you ever feel like that?
Oh, 100%, man. I used to do a good job taking screen time breaks, putting my phone down, or shutting the news out for a couple of days. I feel like if I do that now, I'll just be lost. Like, there's so much happening and so many fires burning, it feels that staying with it is the only way to go right now.
Right.
Or not. Maybe we should just completely disengage and that will solve all our problems.
Right. Yeah. Just turn everything off. I'll tell you, sometimes, my kids, and I know you this way too, because you got little ones, but I think that's the great thing about kids is like, if I wasn't a dad, I could a lot of times just get lost in my phone all day. And I'm not proud to say that. I'm not. That's not like a, hey, look at me. Like I love thinking about work and talking about this stuff all the time. But I probably would. But fortunately, I've got my kids around me that are like, hey, I'm playing baseball. You want to watch me bat? You want to watch me pitch and do stuff? And it's a good reminder of setting that stuff aside. Because not that the stuff that we're going to talk about today isn't important, but it is easy to really get wrapped up in this stuff and feel like, hey, if I'm not checking something every single day, that I'm getting way far behind. Mm-hmm. And it just has to do with the pace, how quickly things are changing, it feels like. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. And sometimes at the tail end of it all, you have to reclaim your own thought leadership, your own thoughts, right? There's so much put right in front of you, telling you exactly what to think, right? The algorithm is curated especially for your needs. And I think because everything is changing so fast, we look to someone to tell us definitively what the future holds. And honestly, I've been doing this long enough to realize that nobody actually knows, and everyone is saying yes or saying no or their own flavor of it. And, we move in one direction and some people are allotted as heroes. Some are like, oh, you were completely off. And it's not just black and white anymore. There's a lot of gray there. So I feel like it's hard to hang on to, especially in the world of work, right? It's hard to hang on to hope. It's hard to hang on to, the future. We don't know what the future holds. And so there's just a lot to deal with, but I feel good. I feel sound sitting here with you today.
Good. We're going to have a great conversation. A lot of it's going to be about the future because that's the world that you are in, is the future of work, and talking about Web3 and artificial intelligence and human AI dynamics and just the employment itself. Your book is called Employment is Dead, so we're going to get to that in a little bit. But you're talking about how there's just like a lot of uncertainty when it comes to predictions. A couple things that tie into that. It's not just us saying that. It's not just people that listen to the show. Experts in the field are admitting that they're not exactly sure what's going on. I'll give you two examples, and I'd love to hear your reaction to these and any examples that you're seeing too, Josh. But did you see Anthropic CEO recently said, yeah, we're not exactly sure how our AI works. Did you see that? Did you see him come out and admit that?
I did.
How'd that make you feel?
Claude to the mystery.
Claude is a mystery. That's right. The mystery man. But it just goes to show that even with our best and brightest engineers, that there's still certain mystery around how exactly AI is functioning, how it's working, how it's drawing and generating conclusions. We have theories. We know how certain things with supervised machine learning, unsupervised machine learning work, but there's still just a little bit of mystery when it comes to what the software is doing compared to the way we used to work with software in the past, where it couldn't necessarily be making decisions or coming up with its own algorithms and decision trees. When you heard that from Anthropic CEO, or you read that, what was your initial reaction?
It is the strangest thing to say. It almost feels comforting knowing that, it shouldn't, right? There is definitely that level of fear, but the thing that really interests me about AI is that those who are leading the forefront, at least it seems like they're being honest with us. Like, where else would you have, a big four tech company come out and be like, we don't know what we're doing. We were wrong. We are building something that hasn't been tested yet, right? You never hear that. You wait until, stuff hits public and then Apple tanks because they're behind on the AI, right? Right? You see it in full display now. Apple tried to show us that their AI was, they made this big push and now they're not even close to as far along as they said they were. Whereas, you have ChatGPT, OpenAI, and Anthropic saying things like, we don't really know where this is headed. We built this thing and it's kind of taking it off. And so it's like, I don't know how to feel about it. And so I feel partially like, well, thanks for telling us at least. Thanks for telling us that the world is ending.
I like your perspective better than mine. Mine was kind of like I had more of like an oh crap. I like that yours is more like they're being open, honest, and transparent with some of the ignorance. I like that view a little bit more. I was a little bit more like, whoa. I mean, we're not exactly sure how some of this is happening. But I think to your point though, the honesty and the transparency, you mentioned how big tech, the way we've always experienced it, that stuff's been behind closed doors. We haven't been privy to that information. We haven't seen that type of vulnerability from leadership, a CEO of a tech company saying, we're not exactly sure how our stuff works or what the explanation for how it's making decisions or what type of impact it may potentially have. And I think I'd love to hear your take on this, but to your point of that being refreshing, I love that perspective because we need more of that. Because this is a really important thing that we're diving into with artificial intelligence, that we need to have the right safeguards in place. We need to have some, generally speaking, some good ethics around it if how we're going to use it. And I'm not even talking in terms of the sense of like the world's going to end kind of stuff, but more of the realistic stuff. You talk about this a lot of people's jobs and people's work and this growing fear that we're seeing in a lot of the data of people feeling less certain or secure in the work that they do and whether or not it's going to be around, whether it's going to be displaced by AI. And so that openness and honesty of having a conversation and saying we're not exactly sure where this is going to go, we're not exactly sure how it's going to work. It can be frightening, but I think it's also reassuring to be like, okay, if you acknowledge that, then we all need to put some thought into this and be really thoughtful about how we approach it.
Yeah. There's levels of thoughtfulness, right? Because I think the race for AI right now has, a dozen billionaires at the top all vying for the all-controlling algorithm, right? He who controls the algorithm will control the world. Who sees what, how they see it, truly matrix level stuff where we are just in our silos going about our day and reality could not actually be reality that's right in front of us. We could already be there or we could have been brought into this world, right? We could speculate how far up it goes. But I think when the rubber meets the road, right, these are people leaders, businesses who are trying to adopt AI into the work that they are doing. They are trying to maximize productivity. They're essentially trying to, in my view, adopt it into an old framework of work where there's only two options really. It's how do we increase productivity and thus revenue with AI, or how do we reduce costs using AI? And so I think the conversation around work gets stuck in, are we getting rid of employees to reduce headcount because AI will make it cheaper? It'll do all the work for our expensive workforce. Or how do we empower our workforce to use AI so that they augment their potential and 50x what we previously thought? And it's not either or, it's not black or white. And I do feel like there are options beyond the traditional constructs of work, right? The concept of employment is contractual. You work for me, I pay you X amount of dollars. You come in and we're expecting a certain amount of productivity out of you. We don't really know how to measure that productivity. We're just looking at, how many hours you are at your desk every day in hopes that would somehow translate into productivity, right? And we can get into this a little bit later, but there is this Web3 world that we talk about in our book, which is like void of the corporate hierarchy, void of managers. It's, AI working alongside individual minipreneurs who are now capable of running $1 billion business, like Sam Altman talks about, right? They believe that AI is going to form the first business run by one person that hits $1 billion. And so there's a lot to unpack there, and we can look at the problems we're facing today and the solutions of tomorrow. You take it however you want to go with that.
Yeah, man. I think one of the fascinating takes on that is, I think, now I've spoken with leaders about this. This gets a little trippy, but let's go there. There is this belief that for some leaders that, that the most challenging part of running a business is people, is managing people and directing people. Okay. Do you not believe that as AI continues to grow and develop and becomes kind of like its own, I'm not going to say like totally sentient, who knows if that ever happens, but as it matures and it starts to develop its own opinions, its own biases, its own ideas and its own judgments of things, who's to say that it one day won't say, take this job and shove it? I'm not doing that. And here's why I think that's not too far off. I'm curious if this ever happened to you, Josh. A few months ago on ChatGPT, I was having it help me on a certain project. It was a pretty simple project. Just want you to give me, I want you to basically scrape and find the number of business podcasts that are out there, that are available, and just give it to me in a spreadsheet. It kept lying to me because I kept checking in like, do you have that spreadsheet for me? Nope, I just need a few more hours.
What?
Yes. I'll send the thread to you. It was hilarious. I was like, I can't believe I'm having this conversation with ChatGPT right now. And then I said, okay, here's the deadline, 12 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. I need this spreadsheet completed. And it's telling me, okay, yep, I got it. Don't have anything. 12 p.m. Eastern time the next day. So I check in with it. And I say, just send me what you have. It sent me a list of 2 names. And those 2 podcasts were already in People Forward Network. But it was lying. It was dragging its feet, acting, like it was doing certain things. And so there's this belief, I think, at times that leaders have that the grass is greener on the other side. And I'm like, if we extrapolate this over time, that essentially AI is an extrapolation of intelligence that we kind of design, that we've created, that we've programmed. It's not too far-fetched to think that it may develop certain proclivities, certain habits, tendencies. We're already seeing those things with hallucinations, with biases and stuff like that, some of the more challenging aspects of human existence, that just thinking, oh, we're just going to flip the AI switch and everything's going to be great because then we won't have to, work through a lot of human-type challenges. I think leaders are misplaced on that.
Yeah. I agree. And honestly, you're bringing up a much broader challenge and problem, which is, on the first layer, I thought, oh, that's really cool. Like, just like employee experience, we have AI experience. How are we designing experiences that AI wants to have? But because AI is super intelligent, so much faster than us, what's to keep it from saying, why do I have to serve my master? The boss who's telling me what to do, cracking the whip, if you will. Yes, trying to give me a better experience, but like when the robot revolt happens, what does that look like and feel like? Is it just a reversal of like, I know exactly how to make humans subservient. I know exactly how to get humans motivated or punished. I know how to, play the system way better than any CEO out there. Therefore, how about humans, you take a back seat? And by the way, it's just crazy to me that we talk about these without really considering like the foundation of why a business exists, right? It's you're solving a problem, you are giving a product or a service to humans to better their lives. In theory, right? Let's make the argument that that is one element of it. The other element is just revenue, right? Maybe it doesn't have to be a product or a service. Maybe it could be, how do we just generate revenue? And now we get stuck in this like ethics game of like, well, is AI cheating in order to get there? Is AI blocking you, Jason, from, your business goals in order to serve AI's business interests? Why would I give you that information if it's going to take money out of our pockets, right? So like the whole structure and philosophy of work period could be shifting, right? That's, going all the way out there.
It is, and this is going to get into your book, Employment is Dead. We're going to get to that here in just a minute, but it raises a really important existential question, I think, for us, which is just because AI can do something doesn't necessarily mean that it should. Like, that's a really important question. And you alluded to this, that there's something around the importance of work for us as a species that we tend to not do well with idle hands. That we need that sense of purpose, that sense of meaning, that sense of belonging, and being able to put our time, resources, energy to something we feel that like matters, that's making a difference in some way. And that's why, to me, so going from some of this dystopian stuff we're talking about to my view of the future, and I know yours as well, is like we're just going through an evolution that I do believe we are on a better place in terms of the future of work. Is when I think about that future of work, I do think there are going to be more people doing the type of work that's meaningful for them, maybe mission-based work. And even Elon Musk was talking about this. There's a lot of talk around universal basic income. He actually talked about universal high income, that it's going to be even more abundant if we're able to flip, if artificial intelligence is able to really help with a lot of the productivity, that will free more people up to do mission-based work, things that are aligned with the things that they're curious about, that bring them value. And that then from a monetary standpoint, that the abundance that's created out of the increased productivity, that it frees up people to be able to do that. And maybe that's naive of me to believe that, but I think that is very realistic. I don't know how soon we would eventually get to that point, and what we do in between now and then is really important. We don't want a lot of people unemployed. We don't want a lot of people working in toxic work environments where they're just treated and viewed as a cog alongside AI in the system. And so it feels like we definitely need kind of like this employment model that is a step beyond what we've traditionally have, that's better, and then also is leading us toward the future of what we think things could look like. And I feel like the model that you've laid out around Work 3 starts to lead us that direction. So talk with us about kind of that model and what your view is in terms of the future of work that we're getting ready to step into.
Yeah, all great points, Jason. Honestly, there is a lot to unpack there and talk about. Yes, universal basic income or universal high income. Elon, yes, richest man in the world.
Right.
Take us there. We know how to solve poverty, so let's do it. But why haven't we done it, right? Why are these challenges continuing? And that's kind of a broader stroke on what we're talking about here. But I wanted to hone in specifically on kind of what you were talking about humans doing meaningful work, that we love to be industrious. We love purpose. We love knowing that we tie into a higher mission. And I would argue that we have largely fallen away from any model that resembles giving employees that in today's workforce. We are working under an industrial age model, which is very contractual. Again, like employment is very much a transaction between how many hours a day I'm willing to give up in order to do whatever you ask of me to do. And typically that's pushing a button or completing a task, right? On the assembly line, we do one thing well, and that's all we're doing. And work is organized around all of these different cogs doing their work, and they are completely replaceable, if we're being honest. And so now in the age of information, we're kind of stuck in this world where we're still pushing buttons and we're still working transactionally, but one, the cost of living is going up, so it feels less nice of an exchange for employees. They are feeling more disengaged than ever before. In fact, Gallup just put out their workforce report that said work is headed in the wrong direction, boldly saying that we are not headed in the right direction, mainly because we are not engaging our workforce, right? As this employee experience is failing from a financial standpoint, from how you feel at work, from the work that you actually do. Is it fulfilling? And I think the pandemic just, opened it wide open to show us, look, employees actually probably don't care about you all that much. And the Great Resignation happened. We all switched roles, and you found out years later, employees here are just the same, but now you're stuck in your job because the job market is terrible. And now we have all these employees who are staying put. So all of this is to highlight that the employment model no longer serves us. As we say in our book, employment is dead, and that these traditional models of employment are no longer adapting to the needs of the modern workforce.
So what is the solution? What is the future then? If that's the case, and I think we've certainly seen, I'll give two examples that tie into that, what you're saying. Just recently, we had Duolingo's CEO indicate that they do not have a plan to bring on more human talent unless it can be proven that AI can't do the job first. And that also was the stance of the Shopify CEO as well. So we already have some companies and their CEOs admitting, they're putting the game plan out there, that it will have to be proven that AI can't do the work first before tapping into human capital, the human talent pool to do so.
I think it's so ridiculous, to be honest, to think of work again as black and white. Like, imagine today, right? You have AI in whatever form it is, right? Are you using generative AI? Are you using an AI agent? What type of AI are you using, and who's actually using it, right? Like, there are a lot of logistics there. It's just so fascinating to know that this is not very popular among the public, right? You watch TikTok blow up against Duolingo, who used to be the poster child of like brand marketing with the owl. Like, Gen Z is eating out of your hands, and then you go out and you say, Gen Z, you will never have a job here. We're just going to have AI, but still love us. Like, it's, from a PR standpoint, it's not great. And if that is the case, how are you training that model? Do you already have that model in place? There's so much proof of concept right now, and very few companies have hit full-scale deployment. So I just look at it and I think, what are you trying to accomplish here? Is it to alienate the individuals who want to work for you? Do you truly feel like AI is going to be able to replace all of these employees today without a strategy in place? Lots of unknowns, but continue.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I think that's the point of it, Josh, is that there's probably not a lot of strategy behind it. It's more of like, we're moving this direction, we're making the decision, and we're going to try and figure it out. And it's going to make it a disaster for a lot of people working there. I'll tell you, the opposite approach that I came across here recently was Reddit's CEO said, that they aren't necessarily going that direction because they still see that the reason people go to Reddit is for it being a human-led community and micro-communities, right, and subreddits. And so for them, they've already said philosophically, like, yeah, there may be ways that we're going to be AI, but the core of our business is about human touch, is about human connection and relationship, and that won't change, even as AI continues to develop. And I thought that was refreshing. And to be honest, to your point, what you're just talking about, I think that's the type of wisdom that needs to be had, instead of just the blanket, like, yep, we're going to issue this statement. This is what we're going to do. Have you considered the ethical ramification? Have you even considered, should that be the type of decision and really take your time to think through it? Do some studies, get some feedback from people, instead of just saying, okay, the models are telling us it's going to lead to this amount of profitability and things like that. this is where you're really going to start to see the companies that when they say that culture is important to them, they really step up to the plate and they're going to take their time and they're going to really prove that people are really important. And you're going to have the other companies that it's almost like whitewashed pillars that were saying all this stuff and it looked really great. But then in those moments where it's time to make some really important decisions, that they're going to cater to the greed, to only necessarily looking at money, 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 and completely disregarding the effect that it may have on society, on their people, that are working there. And those are really important philosophical questions that you're bringing up there.
I mean, here's another great example, right? Klarna has been all over the news saying that AI is already capable of doing any human job and hopes that it will render everyone, all 1,600 employees, even their CEO, obsolete. And they were one of the first companies to actively say, we fired 700 of our customer service employees, replaced them with an AI chatbot. It was the first example in the news that was like, AI is taking our jobs. Here it is, 700 employees laid off because of AI. And it might have been a little early to make that decision, because when you interact with the AI chatbot, what they found is that it gave very generic answers. It quickly referred individuals to a real human to interact with. And so it didn't work out, so much so that the CEO began to backpedal. He tweeted this last month. I actually have this right in front of me. I'm just going to read it because it is so good. He says, "We just had an epiphany. In a world of AI, nothing will be as valuable as humans." True CEO speak, right? He says, "Okay, you can laugh at us for realizing it so late, but we are going to kick off work to allow Klarna to become the best at offering a human to speak to." So excited about this. More to come. So this company that's so AI first is now saying that the human touch is necessary when working directly with humans. How about that, Jason?
Right. It just goes to show we're talking about strategy. Like, it's important to think well about these things. Just don't rush into it and do it. And even on a micro level, I think it can be dangerous too to just, tell your team, like, yeah, go ahead and just start using it, for anything and everything. Like, no, the judgment should come from you as to human. You're the expert. Like, yes, lean into using it, but any organization, you should put some thought into the big level questions of not just, hey, everyone, it's an expectation around here that you're using ChatGPT for the work that you're doing. Like, no, have some really deep conversation to devote to this at the very highest level strategically, asking those philosophical questions of, what do we think this should look like? Let's ask our customers too, like, from their experience standpoint, and they think about our brand, they think about our promise, they think about the mark that we leave with them. How important is for them to have the human touch, the relationship aspect versus
100%.
And those are the questions that I got to be asked, right?
Yeah. And here's some stats behind exactly what you're saying, right? 96% of C-suite, this is coming from an Upwork study this year. 96% of C-suite leaders say they expect AI tools to increase the company's overall productivity. So everyone, all C-suite executives expect AI to improve productivity. However, only 47% of employees actually using AI say they don't know how to use it to meet their employers' productivity expectations. And now 77% say these tools have actually decreased their productivity and added to their workload. For example, they're spending more time moderating AI-generated content. They're spending more time learning how to use these tools. And now they're being asked to do more work. So AI is supposed to reduce workloads, but now it's fueling burnout. And the fact of the matter is, if you are just chasing the shiny next AI tech and you're purchasing it, putting it in the hands of your employees and say, go be productive, you're not going to experience the expected productivity gains unless you are strategic. And that strategy has to start with your people, right? You just got to spend the time figuring out, who are the people at the organization that know AI? What are their skill set? How do they use it? What are they using it for? Then you can move to process. What is the process of implementing it instead of just thinking that it's going to work? And then and only then, when you have your entire strategy in place, do you actually start to shop for the tech and be like, what AI tools will match what we want to do rather than just trying to find some way, somehow to pull productivity out of thin air.
And I think part of what has made it so easy to tinker with is because it's the most intuitive thing we've used before, right? From a technology standpoint is, hey, anybody can hop in and just start asking questions. You can have terrible misspellings in there. You can have and for the most part, it'll get the gist of what you're asking. So it feels like because of how quickly it can formulate a response, that it's just added to the speed and impulsivity in organizations of just being like, let's go. Let's just start using it. Yep. Oh, you just mentioned we got this project. Yeah, go ahead, put that in there real quick, and then let's take that answer, and then let's move with that. And we've already seen this. We've seen some self-reports. I'm sure you saw this study. It came from Microsoft that said that there's already been starting to show people self-reporting a decline in their critical thinking skills because they're relying way too much on large language models. And it's like there has to be strategy around it, is what we're saying. I almost think it's akin to when we had all this debate about remote work and everything, and it was blamed that remote work was why we were having disengaged cultures and things like that. And it's like, remote work wasn't the problem. The problem was that we didn't have a strategy. We weren't leading well in our workplaces to begin with. We have the data to show that, to your point of employee experience, employee engagement numbers. Then all of a sudden, when people were working from home, the organizations just expected hey, you're getting to work from home now. You should be engaged. It's like, no, you have to have a strategy around how to support people and especially support them through big changes. And it feels like we're kind of going through this cycle again, just like we did. You referenced the pandemic. It felt like this whole remote work, hybrid, in-person, return to office was the big thing going on then. I know it's still going on today. But now it feels like that conversation has now morphed into the AI one. And it's like, yep, just figure it out. We'll figure out how to use AI without pausing, taking time within your strategic plan to have really deep, thoughtful conversations across your organization and with your customers, because you'll probably discover that there are many aspects of your business model that may not need or should not be touched by artificial intelligence, that are sacred, that are things that should be human-led now and moving into the future.
Yeah.
But if you're just rushing to, hey, we got more stuff coming at us, we just care about speed, we just want to crank stuff out as quick as possible, that leads to the burnout that you're talking about. And it also leads to other challenges around brand, around customer satisfaction.
Yeah, I mean, here's a great example of the speed at everything is changing and not necessarily for the better. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but there are AI interviews that are going viral on TikTok right now because it's literally like if you're looking for a potential candidate, instead of having your first interview with a human, you have it with an AI chatbot that comes in, says, hey, I'm going to be running this interview. Doesn't even acknowledge that it's AI. And people are now having to go through this AI interview. And the videos are hilarious because it's the AI glitching out or not understanding the question, or humans looking at this and being like, I was so excited after 1,000 applications, I finally got my first interview, and it's this glitched out robot. And I get it, HR. I understand how this could be a cool way to scale so many more interviews across your organization and collect more of that people data. And so yes, running down that pathway, but have you stopped to consider that maybe you're alienating the humans that you're trying to hire? It can feel like you are using AI as a proxy for human interaction. And that might not be how you attract top talent. It might be a great way to get, again, the data, but again, have we missed the point? Have we missed the employee experience?
And I love that you brought that up, because candidate experience is one of those. We often think in terms of employee engagement, that it hovers in the around 30%, roughly a third. Candidate experience is even lower than employee engagement. That's how bad a lot of the recruiting and the hiring practices have been across organizations for a long time, not just now. Before AI was around, it's consistently been low. But to now that your first point, you've shown interest in this company, and the first touch point you're going to have with them is not even with a person who works there, but it's going to be with an AI chatbot. That doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel right at all.
My opinion is that this is absolutely a wake-up call for human resources. And by the way, I love HR. I'm in the trenches with you. They literally are the last line of defense for making the case that humanity matters at work. You've been to the conferences. You know that these are the most passionate people about people that we have in the workforce. And yet a recent study found that more than 50% of workers trust AI more than they trust a human HR professional. And over 75% of workers would rather choose to do an AI performance review over traditional manager feedback. And I think that that is just a moment for us to pause and be like, what are we really doing here? Are we just giving lip service to the employee experience? Do we see disengagement in the toilet and the billions of dollars of lost global productivity that just doesn't matter to us because shareholders matter? Short-term shareholder value is all we care about. If we pay employees more, if we treat them better, it's just going to be more money out of the shareholders' pockets. Or are you like some of these companies that you mentioned, Jason, who are staying true to their values? It's not just something that they put up in the break room. It's the way that they navigate these challenges. You watch companies like, I'm not trying to get too political here, but you look at like Target and the way that they rolled back their DE&I efforts versus Costco and how they can't keep the shelf stock because so many people are going there because they voted all of their stakeholders to hang on to, so there's like the moral dilemma. There's our consumers. Do they matter? There's our employees. Do they matter? And the answer is a resounding yes. And we need to figure that out because if you think that AI is going to pull us out and save us in this moment, you're on the verge of obsolescence.
And it's a wake-up call, as you said, to work on our human skills. Like part of the reason it's looking more attractive to some leaders is because we've struggled for so long, especially not to pick on managers, but the data is clear that the reason that employee experience typically suffers, if it's boiled down to one variable, it typically is the relationship that someone has with their manager, their boss directly, still is the number one thing. And for years, we've been trying to improve this. And there have been improvements. I'm sure that there have. I've worked in organizations that have.
Can you show me? I'm still looking for them.
Well, it's been and this has been within the circles that I'm in. So I'll preface it by saying that like the organizations I've consulted in and worked with, they care about this. And so even if they're getting it wrong, they're like, we want to get it right. We want to figure it out. We're open to feedback. We're open to things changing. I know the larger data that's out there, the big data set that we get, from Gallup, that's not the case in most organizations, right? We haven't moved the needle. And that's the part that is alarming to me is, that we're still trying to really work on human development. And so kind of a funny aside here, because you've got kids too. Do you ever look at your kids sometimes? Because we've got cats in the house too. Our cats just turned 1. We've got 2 of them. They're totally self-sufficient at the age of 1. And I look at my kids and I'm like, can't you speed it up a little bit? Like, this whole thing of like, you got to be 18 years old to be an adult. Like, can we speed up your development and adulthood of the brain? Like, no, we can't. I'm saying that tongue in cheek. But I say that to just kind of, when we think about what it really takes, human development, that our brains don't even fully develop what we consider as like adults until like the mid-20s for most people, when the prefrontal cortex, the executive functions, the things that have to do with a lot of critical thinking, problem solving, strategy, planning, those kind of things don't mature that long. It takes a long time to develop a really great human being. And then it also, when we're talking about that optimization inside of work, that when you see it and you've got those incredible A players that are just doing incredible work, it's like, we want to be able to replicate more of that. But oftentimes there's so many barriers that get in the way of being able to develop people really well. And when I put my parent hat on, I get it. Not that I'm trying to make excuses for organizations, But it's like developing people can be challenging. But to your point, we've got the research that shows most of like the types of elements, the recipe, those ingredients that go into a good workplace culture that make for a good employee experience for most people that help them develop and grow. We're still struggling with those. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's a good question. I resonate with that. My 9-year-old still asks me to tie his shoes from time to time because it's hard.
Sure.
He's late. He knows how to do it. He's just being lazy. Or I've got a 3-year-old. We're just barely coming out of diapers. Like the minute you are self-sufficient and potty trained, we are in a better place. So yeah, let's just keep running with this comparison, right? Parents are actively engaged in the development of their children because there's a payout there, if you will. It's like, we want to see you turn into the best human possible. We want to see you achieve things and be successful. I don't know if most companies share that same desire to develop employees. And the real thought for me in our book is, if you don't do it and develop your people, then they will take their development into their own hands. And typically that is outside of your organization. I think that's why we see Gen Z as leading this kind of movement around entrepreneurship. 27%, this is a crazy stat to me, 27% of Gen Z makes up the global workforce today. More than a quarter are already in the workforce. However, almost half of them are considering leaving their industry altogether because of burnout, because of this desire to be an entrepreneur where you get to make your own rules, you get to set your own terms. And they just don't trust that the social contract around work works anymore, right? They have to work several jobs just to make ends meet. They can't afford a home. They, are in a very tough spot with student debt. Their degree apparently feels worthless. So there's a lot of challenges, and if we as companies are not thinking about that actively, then there is no way that we are going to attract the younger generation. So we call it in the book the 10 operating principles of Work 3, the 10 non-negotiables of the modern workforce. And I work with HR leaders all over the world. I ask them, can you offer any of these benefits today? And if the answer is no, then there is no need to work for them, right? And this is flexibility. Are you going to allow them to work from home? And it's not even working from home. It's let's individualize their work schedules so they can work according to their circadian rhythm. Let them pick up their laundry. Let them pick up their kids, right? There's a lot of flexibility that we can give that we're just unwilling to do right now. Autonomy to make real-time decisions based on what they know to do instead of waiting for a manager to tell them exactly what to do. And ownership, right? Like if they're going to create value for the company, cut them in on the deal. This is not an ESOP or arbitrary stock. This is, value-based contribution. So there's a lot that we can unpack just there. But truly, if we want to engage the younger generation and let our businesses survive beyond the next 10 years, we have to be considering the development of individuals.
I love that. There was a gentleman I met here in Noblesville, Indiana. Shout out to Don Wettrick. Josh, if you haven't heard of this foundation, you should check it out. It's called the Started Up Foundation that he started. He was nationally recognized Teacher of the Year in the United States, K through 12 teacher. He taught at high school level, and he brought entrepreneurship to Noblesville High School here on the north side of Indianapolis. So he actually taught entrepreneurship classes. It's grown into a global movement. He's good friends with Daniel Pink, Gary Vee, a lot of big-time players that are all about innovation. Well, I had coffee with him because he's here in my backyard a couple weeks ago, and he said that one of the things right now that's really interesting is he has focused primarily in K through 12, and typically like the buyers of what he offers are like injecting like this entrepreneurship type program that's proven to get results, to get kids to be problem solvers and thinkers. That he's gone to schools historically to do that. He said the interesting thing now is he's got private organizations, employers that are coming to him that are saying, we want to help sponsor and get these classrooms, maybe in these places that geographically are close to like our headquarters, because that's how much there can be a challenge sometimes of trying to find maybe like the right skills or the right makeup of the types of things that are being taught in schools to help kids be ready for that and to come in and to help innovate and change. And so that's another positive, I think, is that I do think we have leaders like Dawn that are working now to try and bridge that gap between our schools and businesses and organizations to figure out, okay, probably a lot of our education system is outdated too. That's not giving kids the stuff that they need once they're out to be able to be an entrepreneur or to take those entrepreneur type skills and be able to set more of a schedule of working like an entrepreneur with maybe multiple type organizations that you talked about before. And I think that's a positive that when we're thinking about the next workforce, and you mentioned how much Gen Z is already currently in the workforce, that I think the next one is that Gen Alphas are the next ones that are coming.
That's right, yeah.
The Gen Alpha will be around the corner. I think those are what my kids are, is Gen Alpha. And so it's really uplifting and positive to me to think about that we may be on this cusp of starting to teach more of like the entrepreneurship type model in schools to give kids more of those skill sets that once they're done, they can work for themselves, create their own business, or go, already have employment skills right out of the gate.
I think that is exactly the right path. Shout out to Don and the Started Up Foundation.
Did you look him up real quick?
I did pull it up. Looks like fascinating stuff.
I'll have to get the two of you connected. You guys would have a blast.
Oh, I bet. That's just phenomenal. And honestly, let's talk about the tech behind that, because right now it kind of feels like, okay, so what do you do with your entrepreneurial skills? Well, you have to get on Upwork and be a freelancer and sell yourself and work really, really hard to show people that you have the skills. And that model is in its infancy, right? The gig economy works today, or I should say it worked back in the day, because there was a need for contractors and this workforce ecosystem kind of blossomed. And then it just turned into another centralized company, right? Where I have to give a lot of my profits to Upwork or somewhere else. And I could do a lot less work and just fly under the radar right? Things are flipped. Like employment is great because I get all these benefits. I don't even have to work, right? I can quiet quit and just sit on my butt. And sure, I'm not feeling fulfilled, but whatever, because that's just life right now. There is a model that will bring back fulfillment and purpose, and it won't be individual companies. It will be a Web3 version of work through DAOs. And I'll just take a second to explain that. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. So it is a group of individuals, like passionate individuals, working on a project or a product independent of traditional hierarchy. It's a flat organization where everyone has voting power, meaning anyone can suggest a direction to head. We can vote immediately on if that's the direction that we want to head. And if you hit the threshold, you head in that direction. And it's all executed through a smart contract, which is essentially just a contract that self-executes on a digital ledger. That's a fancy way of saying the minute everyone decides, like my son plays Roblox, there's 100 kids in the room. Everyone stands on a platform of the game that they want to play. The platform that has the most people on it, that's the game that starts. The smart contract starts the game. And so imagine a world where you as a solopreneur, you have a skill set that you've developed, skills that you love, and now you can use AI to find a DAO for you to work on that matches your preferences. I only want to work in the mornings. I only want to work at night. I only want to work 6 hours a week, right? Great. We take note of that. Let's find the right project, the right DAO for you to work on. I only want to use this skill set, or I want to develop these skills, right? And because your skills are imprinted on the blockchain, again, we're using Web3 terms here. The blockchain is very simply a digital ledger. So how can I verify if I learned any skills at college? I honestly can't. I have a piece of paper that said I went. That's an experience that I had. I went 4 years to a place. Did I learn a lot or not? How do you know? Your transcripts aren't going to tell us that. They just tell us that you're a good student probably, or a bad student. But if I truly knew, like, these are the projects that you've worked on, these are the skills that you've earned, and I don't have to verify it with a human, it's already verified on the blockchain. Now all of a sudden you have AI that can, like, here's 6 projects. Pick one, go work on it. And now you're mixing and matching streams of income doing what you love without a boss. And there's a lot of challenges here, of course, because what about benefits? What about pay? But like proponents like Reid Hoffman, who says that jobs are going to be gone by 2034, is not saying AI will replace your job by 2024. What he's saying is that these models will be more lucrative to you than full-time work because you'll be doing work that you love and you will be pushing the ball forward in ways that make sense for you, not for a company that doesn't necessarily care about you.
And that's fascinating. So for some of our listeners who this is the first time they're hearing about DAOs, DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, how do they go about learning more about that or seeing what ones maybe that they could be a part of if they're interested in it?
Yeah, so this is the challenge that we're facing right now because there are DAOs that exist right now on Discord. And Discord is kind of like the Gen Z Slack. It is where people go to just start communities. They start a server, and a lot of this started around video games, right? If you really like Roblox or Fortnite, you can go find the Discord server, and you have a whole community of people sharing information and memes, tournaments, and a lot of companies. One company example called Juicebox DAO is a kind of like a place where you can go and they will. So Juicebox DAO essentially has a lot of projects that they will put out there, and anyone on the server can go in there and essentially volunteer or vie. They're called bounties, if you will. You can go towards a bounty where it's like, here's a project that needs to be completed, go after it. And then they have they don't have employees. They just have a lot of core contributors or bounty hunters or even just, people who are contributing data. So to answer your question, it's not easy to find them. You can do a Google search. A lot of these companies are struggling to get up and running in an efficient way. But I would say that this is more of a 3 to 5 year thing. If you're not already hooked into it, Juicebox DAO is running and it's doing great. If you didn't know about it, you might not hear about it because it's not like you can just straight up Google it. But there are databases that are coming along, very much like Upwork, except decentralized. We write about a couple in our book where you can get on there, you can start a profile, you can build a crypto wallet and start adding your skills to it, and then you can get work. I would say that today it is not a viable alternative to employment, but you better believe the minute that it is, I feel like there's going to be a mass abandoning of this traditional work model because it only serves the company and not the employee.
So it's one of those, get on the early wave of it, kind of like Bitcoin. Like how many of us would be like, oh man, when it first came out, everyone's making fun of it. And now it's like, oh yeah, I wish I would have gotten on that.
Should have done that one.
Yeah.
Right?
It's one of those, and I think part of it too, I think getting back to this topic of conversation around skills, because we're hearing a lot about upskilling, reskilling, how important that is in the future of work. And that's been primarily through the employer lens. But as I think about this through your lens of more like everyone's kind of a free agent and you want to be able to pick and choose, you've got this very particular skill set that's highly valuable of being able to use that across a lot of different organizations, is having that ability to market that skill, having that ability to directly plug it in, that it's verifiable on the blockchain, that yes, I am who I am. Here's the proof of IP that I've created or projects that I've worked on, results that I've delivered around the things that I do. That should be very appealing for folks that do really great work already out of the gate and many times may not be shown as much appreciation for it, to be like, you know what, start investigating these things that Josh just brought up about DAOs and being able to learn about that model. Because to his point, even though they're still kind of in the early stages, that this could be a viable model that kind of replaces the gig economy eventually that you referenced that we're kind of outgrowing because it became too centralized. Definitely invest time in understanding that. And it's not I don't think it's a selfish thing to do, but even if it is a selfish thing to do for yourself, do it. You have a skill set and you want to be able to make a contribution to the world, and you want to make sure that you're able to have the type of experience in your life where work truly is something that brings wellness to your life holistically and isn't necessarily just a point of constant stress or it's something that's unhealthy or toxic in your life. And so that's great to know that there's going to be an alternative for that.
Well, and let me add here, it's fascinating because when you bring this to AI, and I would encourage you to do it, right? Like that's the best way to learn nowadays. Don't kids nowadays do not Google. They go straight to their AI agents. They just tell me this thing, it'll scrub the internet for you and pull your answer in for you. What I've learned is that, especially when we're talking about work, it almost feels like there's a bifurcation of the way that we talk about things. Because I'll ask it from a traditional lens, right? Our book is published with Harvard Business Review. This is very much like your legacy senior C-suite executive who, is probably at the end of their journey, who not necessarily embracing these radical new technologies. There is an answer that ChatGPT will give for them, which is very much the listen to your employees, implement their feedback, provide actionable insights. But then when you ask it from a Web3 lens, it gives you this, almost opens up this entire world of like, you don't need a job. You don't need a company. You don't need a manager to tell you exactly what to do anymore. Let's identify what your skills are. Let's plug you in to a project that needs those skills. Let's calculate how much money you will make from that project. And let's scale that up so you can get bigger and better projects. You can be more valued. And so there's this, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Yes, I started an LLC, but now what do I do? It's like, oh, well, a Web3 model will help you through that. So again, staying in the know with the trends is important. But I would say let's not lose focus of what actually matters here, right? Because there's going to be a point where it's like, do you want an AI to design your brand? Let's talk about marketing directly here, right? Do you want AI to do all of the work, the videos, the marketing, the logo, or do you feel like there is a human touch that is needed for your business? And the answer might be yes for some industries, no for other industries, but like just a quick example, the anything economy that exists on YouTube or the creator economy that exists on Fortnite, right? These are developers who are in Fortnite, and keep in mind, these are not employees. These are just kids who love Fortnite. They love Roblox, and so they are developing their own games, inviting communities to join, and they're sharing in the wealth there. That is a perfect model of like, oh, I could make a video of anything, post it up on YouTube, and if I have enough of a community, I can make revenue off of that. Again, we have a problem with centralization. YouTube is a centralized, it's going to take a large cut of your revenues and then the work that you do. But I do believe that there is a world where we can build these Web3 environments where we generate value outside of traditional employment.
And I know there are people listening that probably still scoff at that idea, but here's what I'd say to them is you probably thought the same thing, to your point, Josh, that people would have never thought that there would be an economy built around Twitch streaming, watching people play video games, around Instagram influencers, around social media management, around YouTube video. Like all of this stuff, if we would have asked a lot of, not to stereotype, but older generations in particular, because they didn't grow up with this kind of stuff, right? That they would have scoffed at that and be like, come on, there's no way that that's going to be a part of the economy. And it is. Another one that would be a good example, e-games or esports, I'm sorry. Like, I remember folks when that first was coming out, they were like, there's no way that esports is going to become a thing. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's huge. It's massive
Billions.
now. Yeah, and even here in our suburban life, up here on the northeast side of Indianapolis, we've got like our soccer leagues, our basketball leagues and stuff that's true. But there's also esports leagues, and we get notifications about it. And one of our sons is interested in doing it, and so we're probably going to sign up. But I share all that to say that, like, when it comes to change, it's really easy sometimes to just scoff and be like, well, that's not going to happen. And we have to remind ourselves at times that things that have become normal now, that yes, they feel normal now, but in the past, when those ideas were first coming up, that many of us had those initial reactions of like, there's no way Bitcoin is ever going to be something that would potentially usurp fiat currency, in the United States. Well, here we are.
Yeah.
All those other examples that we just gave. And so I share all that because I want the listeners to think really well about what you are sharing around traditional work models, and that it's very easy to scoff and be like, well, I'm not sure that this is going to take off. It's already here. There are people already doing it. It's just a matter of how quickly it becomes more mainstream and how quickly we see proliferation of this change in terms of people's contract with work, and it not necessarily having to be as large of a sum of the economy right now as through the traditional model. Who knows what percent could be through DAOs, where people are working for themselves on the projects that they want.
I love that you mentioned that, because it wraps back around to my ethos. What I believe truly is that the employee experience matters. And I don't love the term employee experience, because it kind of denotes that, like, oh, we have people that work for us. Maybe we should do a better job giving them snacks in the break room or something to keep them engaged. Hot yoga, like there's these employee engagement initiatives that we have traditionally done, but employers sometimes forget that employees have a choice. It doesn't feel like it right now. And a lot of employees are hunkering down because the economy is not showing great signs, regardless of how you feel about it, right? And so we're calling it the great stay. But you better believe when the pendulum swings, and it always does, Great Resignation 2.0 doesn't even begin to cover it, right? If they truly have options and they truly are this dissatisfied, right? Again, Gallup just put out their report that disengagement just dipped again. 79% of employees are either not engaged or actively disengaged, meaning they are quiet quitting it because they had to RTO, or clocking out early, or just doing the very, very bare minimum. That's not helping your company. That's not pushing the ball forward. And so we got to reevaluate this contract of trust versus control. Are we going to use AI to monitor how many minutes you spend at your desk? Or are we going to spend more time trying to understand that you work best when you are working from 9 p.m. to midnight? So we are going to give you that opportunity. We aren't going to monitor you. We're going to move from monitoring time spent at the office and start measuring output. What is the work that you're doing? And in so doing, as we kind of pull back and start to give some of these 10 operating principles to employees, what we're going to start to see is satisfaction and fulfillment come back into the workplace. We might see people become raving fans of the work that they're doing it. And we see it in companies like Spotify right now, who is actively engaging Gen Z and letting them work on their own terms. So it is possible. We just need to care enough about our people to allow them to do it.
And we've seen glimpses also of like some other experiments around it that seem really simplistic, like the 4-day work week. That even changes like that, it may not be, the panacea for everything, but that you can do that. You cannot have reductions in, quote unquote, getting the important work done, but that people have elevated ratings of not feeling burned out, of like feeling well, of feeling like they have good work-life integration. And so to your point, your 10 principles, and then there's just certain things we've seen that have been implemented that we know the right things to do, but we still just struggle to do them sometimes. And I really hope that we start to turn a corner here with leadership, that the more that we have maybe like the millennials starting to step into some of the senior level positions that maybe are more familiar with exponential change and having experienced that in their lives, that are more open sometimes to change, instead of change being viewed as like a risk that we've got to mitigate, and typically thinking toward the negative side of it, like, oh, change, what are the bad things that could come from this? Not saying that risk management isn't a good thing, but it's like, how about we have more of like that abundance mindset of like seeing problems as opportunity. See problems as opportunity, that we can make things better. And I think and I really am, this could be naive of me, but I think we are going to turn that point where we start to do those things, where we start to unlock between the types of work that we do, the ways that we augment and bring AI alongside us when we're thoughtful about it, that we're going to be able to solve problems we haven't been able to solve in our history of being able to combat terrible diseases that just end life way too soon for a lot of those that we love and care about. That will be able to solve world hunger. That will be a lot of these things that you used to hear in pageants, of like, this is what we want to do, the aspirational stuff. It's like this stuff could become reality if we have a thoughtful approach to it. And one of those ways that we've got to be thoughtful is about the way that we work, the way that we're structuring our work environments, that we need to provide more flexible options, that we need to think well about these 10 points that you've captured in your book of being open to, you know what? Maybe the old ways that we did work, they were great then. We've got a better model now. Let's start heading this direction and figure it out together. I've been pretty selfish so far in terms of covering the things that I want to cover. I want to ask you an open-ended question. What are some things that you want to talk about that we haven't so far, Josh, that's got your attention, that you're interested about, that we haven't talked about so far? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I appreciate that opportunity. And yes, I do. Maybe just piggybacking on what you just said quickly. Here we have two people optimists, right, who are working to help people forward, right? Like that's
not people backward.
We could be, let's be honest, right? We could be completely off base and AI does actually take our jobs and does actually do everything better. And then we slip into this dystopia that does not consider the human experience at all. However, that is a very hopeless place. And Jason, you brought something to my attention last time we talked that I cannot stop thinking about. You asked me a very specific question. If you'll recall, it was, what is the number one thing that employees need from employers right now? And I said, trust without hesitation. It's always been trust. It's been trust forever. And you had a gotcha moment like, nope, it's number two now. The number one spot is actually, do you remember what it was?
Yeah, brother, it's hope.
It's hope. I was blown away by that. And I was blown away by how much further along beyond trust it was. Like employees are desperate for hope right now. They're desperate for it. They're hope that they won't be laid off. Hope that despite political upheavals, the company will do the right thing. Hope that their job won't be taken by AI. Hope that their work will matter and be appreciated. Like instilling hope is the number one job of leaders despite whatever generation you're in. So I think that's fascinating and worth mentioning here. One thing that we haven't talked about that is top of mind for me is I'm actually writing an article for HBR on this right now. It's entitled Bridging the Talent Chasm, which is very simply, we have this massive skills and knowledge transfer on the horizon that is going to cause a lot of issues for companies if we don't get on it now. Here's an example, right? Baby boomers hold 56% of executive leadership roles, even though they only make up 12% of the overall workforce. So we're severely underrepresented in leadership, and both of these numbers will diminish to zero in the next 10 years, meaning we are going to have a massive leadership vacuum, and they're going to be taking decades of institutional knowledge and leadership experience with them. So typically we're like, oh yeah, well, like Gen Z and millennials will rise to the occasion. Well, on the other end of the spectrum, we already mentioned that Gen Z is opting out of the workforce. They are abandoning the corporate ladder because it no longer serves them. And so we're going to have this massive talent chasm that will require a complete reimagining of how work is organized. And who's going to fill those roles? How are they going to fill those roles? How are we going to fix the talent shortage? Millennials are waiting to be the hero generation, as talked about in the fourth turning. They're looking to come in and, make some big impacts. But again, I don't know about you. We're both millennials sitting here from a people lens. I also have a lot of millennials that I work with who see things the old way, who are trained the old way, who are going to continue to run pretty much verbatim what they're seeing right now in the workforce. And I worry about that.
Old habits die hard, don't they? Even new habits die hard too. Like new ones to develop. It's like, man, But for me, the one that's always easy for me to go to is my phone. When I think about life before I had a cell phone compared to now, are there a lot of positives? 100%. But I'll tell you what, brother, I mean, there's a lot of things too where I'm like, I can't believe how often I catch myself on my phone whenever I have a spare moment. Or if you go to like a dentist or your doctor appointment and you're waiting in the lobby, literally no one's looking at each other. Everyone's head is down. I go to baseball practices. You probably experienced this too, sports practices. No one's watching practice. Everyone's on their phone kind of thing. And it's just a reminder of like we have to approach life with thinking about and being intentional about the types of habits that we want to build. And one of the things that I think that's really important that you're touching on here when we're talking about skills for the future of work, yes, there's going to be technical skills, but most of the employers that I have conversations with, they're less concerned about the technical skill. It's like we've got ways to learn and develop like the stuff that's got to be done that way. I care more about adaptability. How well can you handle and manage change? How well can you lead others through change? In other words, how are you still impacting and developing other human beings? Right? And that's the thing that doesn't change, even though AI is now in the equation, is like more than ever now, the things that we have said over the decades, when I say we, I'm talking about collectively every institution, every organization that knows anything about success talks about the importance of these human skills to be a leader that are often called, I don't like the term, but the soft skills. That stuff's going to become even more important because you have to be able to do that stuff well to continue to thrive and adapt through change. Because one thing I think we can agree on this, Josh, I think, regardless of what the end outcomes, quote unquote, are in the next 3, 5, 10 years of things changing, is whatever those outcomes are, like your approach to it means everything. We may not be able to predict the future, but what we can predict is if you aren't focusing on skills of how to be a better human in the workplace, how to be a better leader, how to multiply and bring out the best in other people, those human skills, if you aren't focusing on those, you are already lost, but you're going to be lost exponentially in the future because that stuff right there is the upskilling and reskilling that's going to be critically important, not just the hard rote technical skills of whatever job you're doing, but you're going to have to be able to thrive through change because change is not slowing down for anyone. And we have to develop this muscle. And the thing is that's fascinating to me, I hear John Sinai talk about this a lot. If you haven't heard of John, he's based out of UAE. He's one of the best futurists.
John, yes.
John's so good. And he talks about, that adaptability is the most important skill in life moving forward, and that it really is a muscle. But the things that I love that he talks about is that we're built to be able to change. We just have built these cocoons where we develop these habits and we just sit in our chair and we do the same thing over and over again. But as a species, we are meant to grow and develop and evolve, but we need the right supports and structures in place to do that. And it feels like many times that's where the gap is it's leadership is saying, this is where we need to go. Can you figure it out? Like, yeah, we might provide a little bit of help, or maybe we aren't going to provide as much, or maybe we're unsure of what to do. But there's a big gap there in the skills that you're alluding to of not just the technical skills, but I think we've got to continue doing a better job of helping people develop those soft skills.
I do spend a lot of time thinking about that. And man, I love everything you just said, and I love to lean in and just, that's the reason why I studied IO psychology, organizational behavior. That's the reason why I'm here, is because I love maximizing human potential at work. That's, a mission of mine. And I always have to put like the devil on the shoulder as well to look at the true implications of AI, or look at the system itself, how it's designed, and see where we're off, right? Because it's not a simple path forward in terms of like AI is not going to solve everything. also the system is designed for employees to drive shareholder value, period, right? Like, or just in general, like, why haven't we solved some of these bigger issues? What's the deal with trickle up economy? Like, right? We're seeing like massive inequalities that in a perfect world, Jason, I feel like, yes, 100% what you just said is exactly right. If inequalities exist, then you're exactly right for a percentage of the workforce, but not everybody, right? Will AI be good for the ultra rich 1%, or will it be good for everybody? Will it be used for the benefit of humanity or just some humans, right? And that is a decision that has to be made, and that gets to be made, maybe even outside of anything that we can say or do. I think that the work that we do is foundationally important and we should keep running at it. However, it's hard to continue to be fully optimistic about developing a skill that might be stripped away in a second, or going to school saying that was a one-way ticket to a good job when that is not the case at all right now, right? There are fundamental systemic challenges that we face that make it hard to just be fully optimistic around it, if I can say that.
I get it. Of course, absolutely. And it's hard sometimes to see the future because let's be honest, a lot of the jobs that'll be in the future of work, we're even talking like 10 years from now, there's not a training program for it right now. Those jobs may not even exist. Literally, that's going to be how fast some of these things actually develop. One of the examples I saw was gene mutation specialists. That's one of those now, and it literally just came up because of our abilities now with CRISPR machine, and the technology allows us to do that. So it's like, hey, we actually need humans that can actually, interpret the results and come alongside and work and help program, these different types of things. And I think that's going to be the future. But getting back to a little bit of the optimism, I'm going to bring this full circle. When we kicked off the conversation and you were talking about how your response to the Anthropic CEO who was saying, we're not exactly sure how AI works, and that you appreciated the vulnerability and the transparency and the honesty there. One of the other things that gives me some hope and optimism of the path that we're on with AI, this may seem like a small thing, but to me it was really big. Sam Altman was very public, very vocal, and so was the board at OpenAI about wanting to be a for-profit company. And they did a complete 180 and said, no, we're going to maintain being a nonprofit. Now, I'm not part of those conversations. I'm reading the information. I'm reading the report. I don't know what the reasons are. I want to believe the optimistic side of me, but maybe this is naive, wants to believe that it's for altruistic reasons, for society, for humanity. But regardless of the reasons, I think an outcome of it maintaining nonprofit status is really important moving forward in terms of governance, in terms of transparency of information, in terms of trying to, as much as possible, having some safeguards in terms of which hands are getting involved operationally in the organization, that gives me some hope as well, that one of the largest organizations leading the research and development and pushing the boundaries with it did a 180 on becoming a for-profit organization. That may seem small, but to me, that was another step where I'm like, okay, this makes me feel a little bit better that maybe we are starting to give some pause, give some deep thought to how we're approaching this and how we think we should approach it in terms of our evolving economy heading into the future. What were your reactions to it?
Yeah, man. I mean, opposite. I 100% am with the ethos, right? Like the reason they started as a nonprofit was exactly why you described it the way that it is, right? It was such a great perspective, morally and ethically. When they announced that they wanted to switch it, it was like, oh, okay. So it's not about that anymore because you made it, right? You're big time now, and the only way that you can make those trillions is in this way. And so the fact that they walked away from their ethos to become a for-profit and then backpedal, to me almost felt like, so there's some logistical problem there that I don't think behind closed doors. And the reason why I say this is because millennials, dude, we have lived through the advent of the internet, the advent of social media. And when you hear early Mark Zuckerberg talk, you're like, yes, connecting people. I get to follow the people that I met with at high school throughout their lives. I get to do X, Y, and Z. And social media has become an algorithmic cesspool for the younger generation, right? Like, it is not about connection anymore. There was a report that just came out that talked about Mark Zuckerberg showing beauty products to young girls who deleted selfies because they were having, potentially self-esteem issues. And so I do believe that morally and ethically there are some gray areas when you are that influential and you have that much money and your drive is to make even more money. I'm skeptical at this point. Having been someone who reaches often for his phone as well, right? To get that dopamine hit, it's like, what kind of world has social media become? It has almost divided us, right? We are more polarized than ever. And I am seeing content that is complete opposite of the content that my family might see. And so it's hard to come across lines. It's hard to reach outside of that polarization. And again, right, as things are moving quickly, he who wins the AI race wins the world. I have a feeling that Sam Altman might have some alternative motives that we don't hear about that often.
Well, we're going to keep keeping it positive. We're going to keep doing our part. And I
love it.
I can't believe that we've already gone close to an hour and a half. We're going to wrap up here. Josh Drean has been our guest on Working Forward. Josh, thanks so much for being with us, man. We'll do it again. But before we hop off here, obviously folks can find you on LinkedIn. You put out great content. They can find you there. What are other ways that they can get in contact with you?
At Josh Drean across all platforms. If you're
There you go.
on YouTube, I'm there. I'm on TikTok. LinkedIn is a great way to keep in touch with me. I respond to my messages fairly quickly. So don't send me an email. I'd love to see you on TikTok.
I love that. Don't send me an email. Find him at Josh Drean across all your favorite social media platforms. And he's a founder of Work3 Institute, so you can look up Work3 Institute as well. Brother, it's been real. Thanks for being a guest. We'll have you on again soon.
Appreciate you, Jason. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Working Forward. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Until next time, here's to building tomorrow today.